Welcome to the Oasis, a wonderful little space in which the animals of the Arid Pack DLC gather together to just have a good time, get some drink and just rest in the shades below some palm trees. Now let's get going with the speed build. In today's video you're going to learn how we are actually able to build a Oasis like that relatively quickly. So the whole process took me only about 2-ish hours, and that is even with a live stream. So prepare for a very efficient way of building, but at the same time we are going to make it look very beautiful indeed. So you may be able to take out a lot of inspiration from this build, and you may also be able to learn a couple of little tricks how to make things look very beautiful in no time. So we are starting off with laying out the foundation of our little spot in the middle of the desert, and that is by just putting down a bit of water, making sure it looks good, putting a bit of green terrain below, and we are just off already to a head start. I'm always creating like a little blueprint of some ground shrubbery. You know, I've been looking at some images how Oasis do look like, and I came up with an idea to make some ground shrubbery, and then I just painted out a little pathway that I wanted to follow, which we are actually going to follow in the real-time part of today's video, through the deserts and the little oasis spot over here. So I could take that as a little guideline to which I wanted to have my foliage patterns to go. I made a couple of variants of the blueprint so that we can put these together, and make sure to always keep hitting the Z or Y key depending on which keyboards you're using. What I mean by that is just rotate the crap out of it. Just keep on rotating. That is the most important bit here, because you want to make sure that everything looks a little bit different, and I highly encourage you to not rotate always by 90 degrees, but just hold down the key and rotate manually so you do have a bit of a different angle every single time. What I do then is I'm going to take some other plants that have a bit more of a bushy top, or like a bushy appearance in general, and fill some gaps already. When I've done that, I try to find a good combination of higher growing trees and lower growing bushes. We have some very beautiful bushes with the new pack. I'm not even sure if they are part of the pack. I think they are actually part of the free game now. So we have some really good, some really bushy and green bushes without them being too awfully green. So like an Oasis is not like super green, you know. The plants and stuff, they share quite a bit of water. So that means we are not really having super green plants all over. It's not like a jungle, you know, it's not a tropical area, but we do have some green tints in here. But what I like to do is also to use the drier variants of these plants to put them in and just get more with these towards the outside of the plant. So you have to imagine there's a plant in the middle, and then the further you go from the central spot, so where the plant usually gets the water from its roots, the more you want to have some dry stuff outside, because, you know, the water takes longer from the roots to get there, so it makes sense that this is dry. And this way I also treated the whole oasis, you know, the more to the center, the more green foliage I used, the more to the sides, the more drier it gets, and also the less lush it gets. You also can see I am using a lot of stones and stuff in between, just to get a bit of texture in. You know, that's the main reason why I'm doing that. Texture is always super important, because frankly, one of the things that this game is not like super great at is the ground textures per se. They are relatively low res, and even though they are kind of good from a certain angle and from a certain distance, they are not super good too up close, and they are also too repetitive to be really good. But you can tell that this actually worked out already pretty well. The main area of the Oasis is done, and so what I do now is I basically create a scene. You can see there's a whole fence around here, but I wanted to ensure that we have some actually man-made dunes, by me, or camel-made dunes we should call them, that act like a little bit of a hiding barrier for the fence. It's nothing else legit. It's just a fence block in a way that you just don't see the fence and it doesn't break the illusion. That is all. And obviously it makes the whole dunes appear a bit closer than they should be from the skybox, because this is relatively far away. But you know, you wanted to make, or we want to make this oasis sit in the midst of a very duney, do you say that? Duney desert? You know, a desert with a lot of dunes. That's what we want to say. But yeah, as this is done, I continued placing things in between, making sure everything kind of looks good, and also as you can see, I made a little bit of a fly through, which we are going to enjoy at the end of the video as well, like a little bit of a camera move here. It's not the entire pathway we do follow along, but we do follow along a little bit of a spot, and then I will take another couple of wonderful, wonderful screens actually, just a couple of new lovely shots, and I have a kind of a nice idea what to do, so prepare for the end of the video. It's gonna look really beautiful, trust me. Speaking of beautiful, you can see there are already some animals in here. I tried to get these animals in different areas simply by giving them dedicated enrichment items that in fact would lead them to go there, but it did not really work out the way I envisioned it. So basically they're still roaming around wherever they want. It would be so good to have territory farming in this game, but we don't. So we have to work with what we have to work, and this is basically have them roam around. I could have done this with another trick. I will show this trick to you in the future. There is something I think that not many people have used so far, but there's a good trick that I wasn't even aware of. But yeah, that's just a little spoiler for something else. What am I doing over here? I'm putting down some rocks, and these rocks, as you can tell, this is the smallest 4-rock kind of gravel pattern. It's not gravel, it's like a little, you know, hill of rocks, I don't know. We are placing them along the little pathway, and this is because these are the open spots and you want to have some more texture in here. You may wonder why this looks a couple of quite a bit of ugliness here, simply because we have them above ground, but fear no more, we have them in a group, and within that group we will be able to move them all at once. It's kind of a lovely little trick to make use of the game toggles you can basically use as a productivity boost. So what I'm doing over here is I use align to surface and also random rotation. Important, I'm not going to use random rotation all. That does only work with actual rocks that basically can be used from every angle. But this piece is a 4-rock that is only very nice from a certain angle, so that way you do want to have only random rotation that maintains the orientation of a piece, and then you keep on clicking over here, just put them everywhere. And the good thing is it will go on, rotate them, and it will always have them aligned to the exact orientation. You have to be a bit careful to not align them to a certain plant or something. I had 2 or 3 that may be floating around. I deleted most of them and cleaned off the area as best as I could, but I think I may have missed out on some, but you know, whatever. But that way you're pretty quick in making things look a lot nicer. You'll see that as soon as I sink them down in a couple of seconds, you will see how much better it looks all of a sudden. And then you can also go in and play a bit with other rocks, just mix them in. You could technically also do the entire building with 4 rocks only, and then you'll be able to also recolor them at once whenever you want. Just click on the group and then recolor the entire group. That is pretty sick, but for my case over here, I did not need that. But as you can tell now, moving them down, you can already tell it looks really, really decent all of a sudden. And the reason why this is so easy to do and looks so good is simply because of the random rotation. What happens relatively quickly, obviously, is that you have a certain... Yeah, you just have a certain different appearance of the rocks, how they peek out and how not. Alright, but now it's time for some rock work. There's one more thing I haven't talked about, I will do in a couple of seconds, but rock work is very important, and I found I had a good combination of rocks over here, so I just used this combination and copied that around. The good bit about this is, if you are creative in how to put them together afterwards, it'll look good and not repetitive. The only rule you have to follow is to every now and then mix in some other rocks, as I'm doing over here, and also just mix in a different orientation of these rocks. Just don't put them next to each other in the same orientation, because then it starts to look repetitive. But as long as you keep rotating and keep having different heights in where you put it, it does still look very nice. The one thing I haven't talked about, which we are going to do in a second, is the usage of decals. I just recently started doing this because this is something that you shouldn't do in bigger projects, because it's actually an FPS killer, but in a in a one-off build like that, it makes the whole thing look even better. The one thing that I'm talking about is actually decaling by the usage of, yeah, as you can see over here, the moss decals. The moss decal can actually be abused as a different pattern of dirt or grass or whatever you want to look it like. I decided to go for a bit of a dirt-grass combination, as if some grass dried out and is on the ground. And I used the exact same technique, just make one group and then keep on plopping them down and using the random rotation in order to have them always in a different angle, sometimes syncing into each other. And also, you know, always want to make sure to connect them to a certain other thing. I always try to stick them as close as possible to the rocks or to some trees, just to give them some grip so they're not floating in the middle or somewhat like that, just to get them some grip in. I think this is very much needed. But at the end of the day, this is almost it for the voiceover before we go into some beautiful camera movements of the Oasis. This is the fulfillment of what you guys have asked me to do. You wanted to have a natural project in which it is all about the natural scene rather than a building or something. And here you go. You got the Oasis. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this. It's a little bit of a one-off, and depending on how much you like it in this video, so make sure to really comment down below if you do like it. We are actually going to make a commented wonderful little tour through this Oasis in a dedicated video. So let's move into the cinematic. And there we go with a lovely little cinematic flying in here, having a little look at the animals strolling around this wonderful little, yeah, not lagoon, but oasis. And yeah, you can tell this little pathway actually looks quite good, as if someone really has, you know, used it a couple of times, so it existed here to grab some water maybe from this little corner here. And then you can see how it really works well together with all the plants and with the decals and the stones popping out. I mean, of course, you could have gone even more crazy than that. And while a rhino is coming from the left-hand side, a camel in the far back. And it's actually funny because there are like a lot of animals in here, but we don't really see too many in this flyover, but you're gonna see more in the next flyover. Working a little bit with some zooms over here. Really happy with how it turned out. And then you have got a nice overview here, while there is another animal in the back getting a little drink. Very neat and tidy. But we are ending with a lovely shot of the Oasis, just really going around, having a day and night circle, sun coming in, sun coming out, animals moving around. Really lovely stuff, and I really do hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you had a good time. I certainly did. So yeah, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I talk to you in the next one. Until then, have a good time and goodbye.